Green YouTube. Got the heavy sweatshirt out for the first time this year. Quite happy. Um, I've never really spoken a lot about Bitcoin here on my channel. There are aspects about it which I personally believe are designed to be confusing, um, and that's with intent. But the idea of having a stateless currency is very attractive to a lot of people. Now, one of the big advantages of having a state currency, it's also one of the disadvantages, is that it is backed by the country that produces the currency, or countries in the case of, like, say, the EU. Um, and that, again, is good because it means that there is something behind it as far as a promise, if not necessarily gold. We had a gold standard in the United States at one time where there was actually a physical lump of gold representing every dollar that existed. And you could, in actuality, go to somewhere and say, here is my $100 bill. Give me $100 worth of gold, please. And it was a 1-for-1 ratio. We did away with the gold standard. Some people lament that. Some people think it was a wise decision because that is a limiting factor on an economy. The disadvantage of a state-backed currency is if things aren't going well in the state, the currency isn't doing well, and there are uh, times when you have had to like have an entire wheelbarrow of paper currency to buy a loaf of bread. There were times when wallpapering your walls with money was more cost efficient than using that money to buy wallpaper. Yeah, that's the truth. I believe that there is actually somewhere in the world where there is $1 trillion bill, which means that it is essentially worthless. That particular currency is meaningless. It might be time to hit the reset button on that. But of course, when the currency does go bad, there are always people who are making lots of wealth anyway. Never forget that. When things get good, there are certain people that are going to reap the most wealth. And when things go bad, there are going to be certain people that still reap the wealth. Often the same people. Keep that in mind. But the idea of a stateless currency, a currency that is not supported by any particular government, that can be transferred electronically, quickly, efficiently from place to place, that can be secured against intrusion. Of course, if you forget your password, then you lose your money. That's happened. And I know of one instance where someone was actually uh, contested something along those lines, and they were able to actually recover some of their lost um, wealth because they could show that they had used state-backed currency in the process of acquiring stateless currency. So it was the regulated currency that actually benefited them in the long run. Funny about that. Um, but the best thing about Bitcoin in the eyes of those that really endorse it is the fact that you can do things without anyone having an ability to stop you. That you can move money from place to place anonymously. And if you are smart, you can then turn it into actual physical things. You can convert it into state-backed currency, which is real, in a way that stateless electronic currency is not. You could have $1 billion of Bitcoin, but unless you can use that $1 billion to do tangible things with it, it is no more of use to you than collecting all the cheeses in Skyrim. It's really cool. You've got all the cheeses in Skyrim. Congratulations. You can't use those Skyrim cheeses to go buy groceries or pay your mortgage or your medical bills or your student loans. Those Skyrim cheeses are of no use to you in the real world. And Bitcoin isn't either unless you can get someone to convert it into something real and tangible. And at the very foundations of Bitcoin is the bigger fool theory, that if on the first day Bitcoin came into existence, it was very easy to buy Bitcoin. and other, there are many different varieties of different kinds of stateless electronic currencies. Um, and it was very cheap. You could spend, a dollar and, purchase thousands of dollars of electronic currency in that first day it went live. That is, over time, the cost grew. And the cost grew because the people that purchased the original stuff were very confident that they would give them a little bit of time, just wait a little bit. They would be able to find someone that is more foolish than them, who instead of paying, a dollar to get 1,000 bitcoins, would be willing to pay a dollar to get 100 bitcoins, or pay a dollar to get one bitcoin, or pay $1,000 to get one bitcoin. So as long as there is someone who is willing to come in behind you and pay you more in actual state-backed currency for your electronic stateless currency, you're good. You will continue to reap the benefits of that stateless currency, so long as there's someone who's going to buy it from you. So long as you can find someone that is a bigger fool than you. Because remember, unless you bought it on day one, you're buying someone else's stuff because they were happy to find someone that was more foolish than them. It's a Ponzi scheme, period. And it is also really good at allowing bad actors to move money from place to place without any kind of regulation or observance. Nobody is seeing what's going on in the background. And organized crime really likes that idea. The ability to move railroad cars worth of cash is much easier to if you can do it electronically, so long as at some point in that process you are able to convert it into real world tangible things that you can spend, or you can enjoy, or you can put into a bank that's actually going to accrue interest. Um, so I'm not saying I like the idea of money. I don't. I don't like the way money is used in the real world. I think it's been used for nothing but evil in many ways. But having a universal trade good is very handy. I mean, if I have this and I can convince you to trade me this for something I need, we're good. We've done a barter exchange. But what if you don't really need this, but I really need your thing? You're not in a position to say, yeah, I know I traded you one for one last time, but how about I trade you half of what is much for that thing? And if I'm desperate, I have to take it, because this is not fungible. This is a thing that not everyone is going to need. And if you flood the market with these things, eventually everyone in your sphere of impact influence is not going to need any. So suddenly what do you do? But if you have a universal trade good, something that can be converted to anything, anywhere, at any time, money, that's much more convenient. I can hand you $100 bill. You hand me something I consider worth $100. We've just, we're engaged in commerce. That's handy. There's a reason that I carry around cash with me everywhere I go, because I occasionally find things at, estate sales and yard sales and things that I want, that I can purchase off the record. No, there's no transaction going on that is being observed by anyone except the two of us, but it's being used with the currency that is state backed. It's just off the books. And that's handy. It has a lot of the same characteristics of Bitcoin, but it does have limitations. I can't give you, my friend Jan in Germany, I can't hand Jan a $100 bill conveniently. I could do an electronic transfer, of course, but someone's going to get a cut of that. It's not the same as me just handing Jan a $100 bill. So having something you can do without anyone knowing about it is handy. But also, Bitcoin is being used by criminals, and it is ripping people off. People are losing access to their monies because of technical problems. they're finding out that there's just as much conspiracy and fraud behind the scenes uh, with Bitcoins as there are in the real world. It has not had all the bugs knocked out of it. The kinks have not been smoothed over. There may be a time in the future where credits, the classic science fiction credit, is an absolute viable process. But I think we're always going to need a fungible, universal trade good that is tangible and backed by somebody, even if it's just a promise. So I'm not a fan of Bitcoin. I love the idea. I've been a science fiction fan my entire life. The idea of credits has always made me smile. But yeah, right now in the real world, it's just a Ponzi scheme that is being used by organized crime to move money from place to place. And if you're involved in it, you really might want to ask yourself, how foolish are you, and can you find a bigger fool?